What's your most accidental badass moment? Story 1. Edit. This happened more than 20 years ago. My little brother comes running to the house telling me that his friend is getting beat up by some bigger kids. The playground isn't far from there, so I throw on my coat and my shades and run out there. I can see the kid on his knees on the ground with 6 other bigger kids around him kicking at him and spitting on him. One of them points at me coming and the others turn toward me. There's a 4-foot-high fence around the playground, and instead of going around, I put my hand on top and leap over it, throwing my legs over. My black trench coat is billowing out behind me, my small, round, mirrored sunglasses glinting in the sunlight. Once over the fence, I kept walking quickly and purposefully directly at the 6 of them. A couple of them start to back up, so I start running at them. They all turned and scrambled away, pushing each other to get out of the gate faster. I chased after them for a little bit, but they all ran away. It was a definite badass moment. Story 2. About 15 years ago, my ex-wife and I were at a party sitting across from each other at a fairly large table. We were surrounded by dozens of friends, some sitting, some standing and chatting in the kitchen. She had my Zippo, and I wanted a smoke, so I asked her to toss it to me. She tossed the Zippo to me across the table. The lid pops open in midair. Somehow I hit the roller with my thumb as I catch it, and the darn thing lights up as it hits my hand. My arm is fully outstretched when I catch it, so I smoothly pulled my arm in, lit the cigarette in my mouth, snapped the Zippo shut with a flick of my wrist, and tossed it back to her with one fluid motion. Half the people at the table jump up in amazement and begged us over and over again to perform the trick one more time. We refused. I never told a soul that the whole event was completely accidental. My friends still talk about it with awe. Story 3. Was in a restaurant with my GF at the time when a guy built like a refrigerator just comes barging through and knocks my GF's drink all over her. It was clearly an accident based on his refrigerator-like physique and being unable to hold his arms at his side. At this point, I'm standing up to help clean her up and figure he's going to apologize or something. Instead, he pushes my shoulder and tells me to get out of the way and let the lady clean herself up. I stare at him and say, "That lady is my girlfriend. You darn well better apologize to her." So the woman and man at the table next to us are notably getting nervous. She drops her menu off the table. By some fluke, I catch the menu flat along the top of my foot before it hits the ground and proceed to just raise my foot, keeping the menu on top of it. I grab the menu into my hand, all the while glaring into this guy's eyes. I just tell her, "Sorry, ma'am, you seem to have dropped this." I just look at him and say, "So I think we left it off where you were going to apologize to my girlfriend for being so rude and then walking around?" Much to my surprise, he turned to my GF and said, "I'm terribly sorry," and then turned around and walked away. Our check was taken care of as well. I've caught light things like pieces of paper on top of my foot, but never something like a menu. And I was always terrible at hacky sack. Story 4. While at a football game in high school, I once threw my gum at a friend who was standing on the fence 40 rows in front of me. The gum landed in his pant pocket, and when he took out his cell phone to quickly answer a call, the gum stuck to his hair. I couldn't feel bad as the series of events was too improbable. Story 5. Me and my then 3-year-old son went to the playground. This bigger kid arrived and started going around scaring the crap out of the littler kids by popping out and roaring and hissing and whatnot right in their face. I saw what car came in and that his mom was sitting in it still, maybe just waiting for him to finish playing. Anyway, he proceeds to do his scare thing to my son, who of course freaks out and runs to me crying. I started fuming. Thinking it is his own parents' responsibility to tell him to cut that stuff out, I decided to go tell his mom. I ask, "Is that your son over there?" She says yes, and I tell her what he's doing, and either you get him to stop or I'll do it for you. To my surprise, she says, "Oh, please do. I can't control him today." So I go back over and try my best to hide right near where he is roaming, and as soon as he's within striking distance, I pop out, and with all the air in my lungs, I scream at the top of my lungs, 1 inch from his freaking face. He ran back to his car, absolutely terrified and crying. I could see his mom. She didn't come out or do a thing. To this day, if anyone messes with my son who's bigger than him, he screams non-nonsensically in their face. Story 6. I was playing beer pong in my friend's garage when his ball rolled under the door. I went out to get it and was walking in the side door, 10 feet from the table, when I threw the ball behind the back style without breaking stride. He had 1 cup left and it went in. Everyone went crazy. I just kept my composure and smiled. Story 7. I catch rattlesnakes for a living in Phoenix, Arizona, as an emergency response service for people who find a snake in their yard, etc. Most calls are diamondbacks, but 1 in 4 or so rattlesnakes end up being a large constrictor called a gopher snake. Gopher snakes can be aggressive, but they're otherwise harmless. On one call, there was a kid of about 15 who was absolutely terrified of a rattlesnake he saw along the back wall of his yard, behind the swimming pool. The only way to really get there was to tightrope it across the narrow ledge of the pool. I got there and saw that it wasn't a rattlesnake at all, but a harmless gopher snake. So I reached down and grabbed the 5 snake. It was difficult about the whole thing, striking at my face repeatedly and getting me on the forearm. I grabbed it closer to the head and wrestled it into control as I made my way back across the ledge to the bucket, where I unwrapped him from my arm and body and put it in the bucket. I then realized I forgot to tell the kid that it wasn't a rattlesnake before doing that. I looked up and he looked like he was going to pass out. Probably the palest I've ever seen a living person. He surely believed he was about to see a man die. I now routinely forget to tell homeowners that it's just a gopher snake. Story 8. This happened in my skydiving years. It was a Saturday morning. There was a group of girls from the nearby college wanting to jump, so the daring, including myself, wanted to do a hop and pop to show the girls what skydiving looks like. We get to altitude, jump, deploy our chutes, and start to show off our crazy canopy skills. I decide that I'll do a hook turn. They look cool from the ground, and my canopy colors were blue and pink. Well, after some tugs on my toggles, my hook turn collapses my canopy. It turns into a low hook turn. Low hook turns usually end up with a visit to the hospital or the morgue, usually the latter. With my canopy folded over, I'm doing revolutions. My altitude is too low to cut away and use my reserve, so I think to myself that, this is it. I hope this doesn't hurt too bad. I hope I can walk away. On the bright side, my lines didn't wrap around the canopy, so there is a possibility that I can pull it out before impact. From the people on the ground, all they saw were some skydivers coming in for a landing, swinging like a pendulum, and some of them coming in to kick this inflatable target we had at our DZ. They could tell that something wasn't right with one of the divers, me, because his chute wasn't open and he was spinning parallel to the ground. The most important thing to do in skydiving is to make everything you do look cool. Atheists, bear with me here. With 100 feet to go before impact. I pump my toggles, release, and my canopy unfurls and inflates as if the hands of God raked his fingers through my lines and pulled my canopy tight. This put my body position perpendicular with no inches to spare for a walk-in landing. The crowd applauds with oohs and ahs, including the experienced divers who knew what was happening. I bow, gather my stuff, and go into the clubhouse to calm my nerves. My buddies told the students, he does that all the time. And they knew I was shaken. I met my old dive buddies a few months ago. We live in different states now, and they brought up that experience as one of the craziest things they have ever seen. Story 9. I was at a college football game for MSU in Missouri. I was up in the nosebleeds after our marching band had played in the homecoming parade earlier that day. I left to go get concessions and started walking down the stairs. I tripped suddenly and began tumbling over and over, down, over stairs, across landings, flailing hopelessly for purchase on one of the handrails or an onlooker's appendage, but with no avail. It seemed to never end. I eventually reached the bottom where the landing divided left and right to leave the mezzanine, which meant there was a bit of concrete and a handrail directly in front of me. I hit the handrail with my lower back, almost fully upside down, and still locked in the kinetic tour de force of my fall. I rocked over the handrail with my lumbar as my fulcrum, dropped the meter or so to the ground, and landed feet first in such a state of confusion that I just started walking as if nothing had happened. The whole section erupted in cheers, to the point it made people on the field look up at us. Basically took an epic fall down a ton of stairs in front of thousands, landed on my feet, and everyone thought it was on purpose. Story 10. About 5 years ago, there was a crazy huge bee in my house, and my brother, terrified of bees, came running to me, wanting me to kill it for him. I picked up my toy airsoft pistol, which was loaded with 1 pellet, pointed the pistol at the bee from about 40 feet away, didn't aim at all, pulled the trigger, and saw a splat on the other side of the room. Story 11. When I was about 11 years old, I got chased by 2 aggressive, hungry-looking Dobermans in a car yard, realized I wasn't going to get away, so I turned around, put my determined face on, and ran straight at them, shouting like I was possessed and intending to tear their snouts off. Dogs disappeared with their tails between their legs. I felt empowered. Story 12. I threw a mini basketball at this kid on the bus, and it hit him in the head. It bounced off and hit his twin brother in the face. They both cried. Story 13. Oh, maybe junior year of high school, I used to stay after school to avoid going home. Some girl 1 year below me came up to me with her friends, acting flirty. Her girlfriend and 3 guys walked away. I did not think much of it at the time. Fast forward about 30 minutes and the girl that I was talking to said that she was worried about her friend and why she was still gone. She said that her friend went in the auditorium and asked if I would see if she is still there. I walk into the auditorium and all the lights are off except for the band pit. I make my way down there and hear a girl say, "No, let go." I got scared and mustered up a yell while charging the band pit. 3 guys take off, followed by the girls. About a month later, my dean walks into my classroom and says that she needs to escort me to the principal's office. Mind you, my school was huge, so while walking to the other building where the principal's office was located, I asked if this was about my skipping gym class a bunch of times. She said no, but whatever it was about must be really big to warrant her escorting me to the principal. We get to the office and I see 2 cops and the 2 girls that I met a month before. Freaking out, I sit down and the cops say, "Thank you, what the heck?" I was asked some questions and was informed that the 3 guys were attempting to assault the girl. I guess I stumbled in at the right time. I had not spoken to my father for months at this time in my life, but received a call from him that night. The school called to tell him what I had done. My pops told me that I was his hero. That was a good day. Story 14. At the end of the high school year in gym class, when it was too hot to do anything outside, the bleachers would be out in the gym, and 95% of people would sit on them, while the 5% who wanted to do something would be shooting some hoops waiting for the period to be over. I was in that 5%, but there was a kid who would always try to run up and steal the basketball and throw it all the way across the gym. If he ever touched the ball, you would have to go 200 to get it back. If he didn't steal it from you the first time, he would tackle people to the ground and then get it and throw it. Huge jerk. He was strolling towards me one day, and I knew what he was planning. So when he was about 10 feet from me, I just sprinted down the court towards the other side of the gym with my ball in hand, and he took chase. About halfway down the court, where everyone was sitting on the bleachers, I decided to ditch the ball so I could run faster and not get tackled from behind by a pretty strong dude. I threw the ball basically straight up as I was running, and by some stroke of luck, he did not see the ball coming down, and it hit him exactly on his face, and he fell on his butt and was rolling around confused for a while everyone laughed at him. After I saw what happened, I ran to the top end of the bleachers because I figured it would be safer if he couldn't find me, but right after he got up, he spotted me and stormed up the bleachers like he was going to beat me up. He got up in my face trying to start a fight, but I didn't want to do anything due to my school's very strict no fighting policy, so I just held my hands up politely like, "What do you want me to do?" After about a minute of him screaming at me, and everyone watching intently, he decides he wants to shove me, but he somehow didn't realize that I was sitting against a wall and would therefore not move very much. He tried to push me, but instead he just flung his own body down the bleacher stairs and slid all the way to the bottom. He ended up getting suspended for fighting, and all I got was praise from the entire class. TLDR, got a bully to run face first into a basketball and then fling himself down a flight of stairs. Edit. He was not actually mentally challenged. He was just a jerk. He was in AP English with me, but none of the other AP classes. Story 15. High school. Sitting at the nerd geek table during lunch. The jocks sat at a table across the aisle about 15 feet away. As usual, they were making fun of us, and one of them decides to throw balls of tinfoil at us while the rest are laughing away. After the 3rd time, I pick one of them up and throw it at the kid doing the throwing. It hits him square in the forehead. He's furious. He stomps over to me and punches me in the face while I'm sitting down. I'm later told by my friends that the punch didn't look like it even fazed me. I stood up to my full lanky height of 6'3" inches at the time and just stared at him menacingly without saying a word. This kid was 5 at 10 inches and muscular, and his eyes were now huge. He made the walk of shame back to his table, and I sat down to notice all of my friends' mouths were partly open. I had become a nerd god. The jocks never bothered us in the cafeteria or elsewhere ever again. They gave me a neutral look in the hallways while passing. Every time that I saw that one kid, his head was down and he never made eye contact with me again. TLDR. How it came to pass that myself nor my friends were ever bullied again. Story 16. I'm a little late to the game, but here it goes. I used to work at a ski resort in PA, so I'd be out riding in all kinds of crazy conditions. One particular day, the snow was really granulated to the point where you could get stuck in it. I was riding down a steep slope going quite fast and hit a pile of granulated snow that almost brought me to a complete stop. My reflexes told me to lean forward and tuck, so instead of a devastating fall, I was picked up off the ground by my momentum and did a front flip on my board, landing perfectly and riding away. I think one or two other instructors saw it. Story 17. I had just finished smoking a joint with my friend and I ask him for a cigarette. He throws it at me and I catch it properly with my mouth. We didn't talk for a good 5 minutes, silently questioning the laws of the universe. Story 18. I worked at a Boy Scout camp years and years ago. One of the activities I was in charge of was building a log cabin. Part of building the log cabin is to strip all the bark off the wood to help keep the logs from rotting. The Scouts generally had a love-hate relationship with this step of the project. On the plus side, they got to use sharp objects. On the minus side, it was hard manual labor. While they were using bark strippers, I was using a chisel to get the bark off around knots. Normally, using a chisel on wood is not a hazardous operation, as long as the blade is facing away from you. One day, I was not doing well on my safety observance. I was trying to jam a stubborn piece of bark off the wood with the blade facing toward my arm. The wood broke against the force. The blade kept on moving through the bark and into my wrist. At this point, the Scouts knew something was wrong as they saw me express frustration, drop the chisel, and grab my arm. I was the only adult present, so I was fighting to keep my calm as to not panic the Scouts. My solution was to turn it into a first aid lesson. I told a couple of Scouts to get the first aid kit and the others to help me over to the picnic bench. I told them they were going to have an impromptu first aid lesson on severe bleeding and shock, with me as their instructor. The Scouts were able to keep their heads together and get the health officer out to our location to treat me the rest of the way. They said it was the best first aid class they had ever had. Story 19. I'm in San Diego with 2 girlfriends for the weekend. We're bar hopping and end up at this huge, noisy club. At this point, we're all completely wasted. We see someone come on stage and say there will be a girls versus boys contest, and they would pick 6 contestants. Of course, I'm the lucky one to get picked as one of the female contestants. The club is incredibly loud, so I can't really hear the instructions, but I get the gist. Each person must take a shot while wearing a boxing glove, with one hand behind their back. The team who finishes all 3 shots first wins. I then hear the audience gasping, but I didn't catch what the announcer said. So the game begins. The first 2 girls in front of me take their shots, as do the 2 boys. At this point, it's a dead heat. I'm up next, and the guy I'm up against is having a real hard time taking the shot, looking at it with disgust, not picking it up. I wonder what the fuck is wrong with him since it's just a stupid tequila shot. So I pick it up with my boxing glove and swig it with a smile on my face. The audience gasps again and starts screaming and cheering. I won the contest and free drinks for the night. Afterward, people are coming up to shake my hand and patting me on the back. After getting another drink, I meet up with one of my friends. She says, "That was amazing. I can't believe you ate that worm." What? I frantically ask her what was in the shot. She looks at me with utter disbelief and says, "There was a huge tequila worm at the bottom of the glass. Did you not see it?" Apparently, I was too drunk to notice and hadn't heard them say that there was a huge fucking worm at the bottom of the last competitor's glass. I gagged and freaked out for a moment, but then settled into a nice, "fuck yeah,"